Clock. We have a quorum present, so I'm calling the special board meeting to order, and we will start as we usually do with a pledge to the flag. I see, Cameron, you have one on your right shoulder. So could you lead us, please?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And just for announcements, anybody who's present in the building, make note, please, of ways to get out in case of an emergency. And we have only one agenda item, which I will turn over to Dr. Gianni.
Yes, thank you, President Hayes, and thank you to all the trustees for coming together on such short notice to consider the change in the guidelines that we recently received from the Suffolk County Department of Health. They will no doubt help us keep schools open for in-person learning, and it will also no doubt help kids get back into school quicker for in-person learning. So I'm going to start off simply with the recommendation, then I'm going to try to hit some highlights and bullets, and then I'll answer any questions for the board. How's that sound?
Good.
Okay, so the recommendation is administration recommends approval of Suffolk County Department of Health Services interim updated isolation and quarantine guidance. Now to give you some bullets, that has to do, as I mentioned, with both isolation and quarantine. So isolation is, of course, when someone did test positive. So these new guidelines allows individuals who tested positive for COVID-19 to isolate for 5 days now, as opposed to 10, and they can return after that 5th day if they're asymptomatic at the end of those 5 days, or the symptoms are resolving. They would need to wear a mask during that time. However, as you know, we already wear masks in our schools, so that's not an issue. In terms of the quarantine gets a little bit more tricky in terms of understanding the guidance, and the guidance continues to change. But the most recent guidance has actually distinguished between fully vaccinated and unboosted and fully vaccinated and boosted. And to give you some bullets there, so if you're not fully vaccinated or fully vaccinated and eligible for a booster, but not yet boosted, quarantine is for 5 days and a well-fitted mask while around others for an additional 5 days. That's bullet one. Next, if fully vaccinated and boosted, with the booster at least 2 weeks after the first date of exposure, or not yet eligible for a booster, no quarantine is required. Now, you remember that was the no quarantine always applied to fully vaccinated. Now they distinguished between being fully vaccinated and boosted. Now, here's the kicker. Just last night, the New York State had this guidance, but Suffolk County adopted the guidance. When it comes to classroom activities, all fully vaccinated individuals, now this includes students, teachers, and staff who've been exposed to an individual with COVID, may attend school or work at school regardless of the booster status. So basically they said in school, it doesn't matter if you're boosted, it just matters if you're fully vaccinated. And they further defined the fully vaccinated not to include being boosted. Now, I know I sent documents out to the Board of Education last night and then again today, and those documents are again available for your review on board docs, as well as the public's view on board docs. I think the next thing maybe be easier for me to just simply answer any questions that the board may have rather than try to read this entire guidance.
I'll start with questions because I know I had asked, does this apply to classroom activities only, or does it also include after school activities?
So So when you're talking about the quarantine piece?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's exactly how they just changed it. They kind of twisted it, right? Classroom, so coming to work. So let's look at employees. Let's look at that. We'll go with employees and students. So an employee now can come to work, and work would include teaching in the classroom or coaching on the field, right? That's work. You can come and still abide by that non-boosted status piece, considered fully vaccinated without being boosted. However, students, let me continue on faculty. But after that work's done, you're supposed to follow that other guidance at home, right? So you should continue to stay at home for those 5 days. Now, when it comes to students, it only pertains to the classroom activities. So what they specifically said, it doesn't include extracurricular. So a student would be able to go to school and attend school, but then after the classroom activities are done, they're to go home. So if they're on the basketball team, they shouldn't be participating. Does that help answer the question, Ms. Hay?
It does, but here, could you break down the difference between the student who was in close contact with somebody in our classroom and put out on quarantine? How long would they be on quarantine? And is that broken down by a vaccination status or not?
It is. So if you're unvaccinated, you would look at that first bullet. So not fully vaccinated, you have 5 days in a well-fitted mask. That's what a student would be. And if you are vaccinated, regardless of booster status, you don't have to quarantine at all.
Unless you have symptoms, in which case you go into the isolation category.
Exactly, yes. Symptoms, unless you have symptoms. Okay. Mr. Trent, you had a question.
Dr. John, did I hear you say that you could come to work, but when you go home, you have to abide by the code?
Yeah.
Under what situation was that? Was that exposure? Was that a positive test? What was that?
So that's quarantine. That's under quarantine. So if you were in close contact with somebody at school, all right, you can come to work, but when you're done with work, you should be following the other guideline. 5 days. And yeah. Listen, I don't make the rules. I just interpret them.
This is my entire frustration with this. It's almost as if we're like, okay, the goal is to get people to work and keep kids in the building instead of keeping faculty safe at work and keeping students safe in the building. It's like we've thrown that piece of the pie out the window and we're just trying to keep the building open. So as if COVID doesn't run rampant in schools, but if you're anywhere else outside of school, then COVID can thrive. So you quarantine when you're not working, but when you're at work, you can be in the faculty lounge, you could be in the conference room, the cafeteria, you can have your mask break. It's just, it's, I don't know if anybody else sees it as odd, but.
Yeah, I understand your frustration, but I think when you do look at it, school is the safest place to be. So when you look at our close contacts in schools and our quarantine resulting in that, our numbers are real low. Kids aren't catching COVID. Kids and faculty aren't getting COVID in school. So I think that's why these recommendations from the state and the county exist, because it's proven that schools are safe, kids are safer when they're in school.
And just looking at the COVID numbers that you give to us, and at times it's on a daily basis, generally, the requirement of quarantining based upon contact with somebody in the classroom has been relatively small, although in the last little while, it's kicked up a lot. And I'm wondering, is it because of having our mask requirement and the distancing requirement as best we can do, that keeps us from having big spreader events come out of our schools.
Well, it's no doubt the masking and the social distancing is what keeping the close contacts occurring in school. There's no doubt about that. And I think those are protocols in most schools, and that's why the state and the county believes that kids are safer there. And again, I point to our own quarantine numbers as a result of close contact in school. They're real low. They're real low. Today, I'm not even sure if we had any. You know, kids and faculty are definitely safer in school than they are outside of school. Ms. Felice?
Thank you, Dr. Gianni. Yeah, I agree with you about the quarantine numbers. A year ago, November, when we were talking about expanding and opening school more, our quarantine numbers were off the charts. And it has been most notable this time around, that our quarantine numbers are very low. And I agree with what you and President Hayes said, that our social distancing practices and our mask mandate, I believe, is what's keeping our quarantine numbers low. And I also think parents and teachers are being responsible, not coming to the building sick. When they're sick, they stay home and they call us and they let us know, and that's why. But also contributes to no exposure, no close contact. So for all those reasons, and it becomes very confusing with the CDC guidelines and the county. But I agree with this change to try to help out the keeping schools open. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, are there any other questions?
All right. Do you want to make your recommendation once more so that I can wrap it up and call that as a motion to approve it?
Yes, I will. Administration recommends approval of the Suffolk County Department of Health Services interim updated isolation and quarantine guidance.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the administration's recommendation with regard to the Suffolk County Health Department interim updated guidance? Do I see a motion for this? Ms. Arruda, and second, Mr. Puccini. Any questions or discussion? I see none from the board members. So all in favor, please raise your hand. And I see 5 hands raised. Are there any opposed? One vote opposed. So the approval is granted.
Thank you. I will get the notice out to the community this evening and put this into effect tomorrow. And again, I thank you for meeting at such short notice.
Quick question.
Puccini?
I know you said you're going to put a letter out tonight.
Yeah.
You know, I anticipate, and probably because I know a few people off the top of my head who now that the quarantine timeline has changed, they're eligible to come back as early as tomorrow. So, I mean, should they just hold off and call their school nurse tomorrow? Or, I mean, what is the procedure? I just want to make sure that there's not confusion, because I think this is a little more confusing than, to most people.
Yeah, I think it's probably best to hold off and call the nurse tomorrow.
Okay.
But I'm sure we're going to have some folks showing up.
Yep.
And we'll just have to deal with it. The administration's aware of it. They know you're considering it tonight, and they are hopeful that it will be approved. So, I'm sure we'll be able to deal with it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right.
Is there anything else before I ask for a motion to adjourn? I see none. So is there someone who wants to make the motion to adjourn? Mr. Trent, and second by Mr. Puccini. All in favor? This one's unanimously approved. Thank you all so much.